Okay, a little bit more practice with the law of detachment, the law of syllogism, and just a reminder of each. Law of detachment, if P implies Q is true, and we also know that P is true, then therefore we would imply that Q would be eventually true. Law of syllogism, and we know if P implies Q and Q implies R, like dominoes. If one implies the second implies the third, then therefore the first ultimately implied the third. It says determine whether the conclusion follows from the given statements by the law of detachment or the law of syllogism. If it does not, or if it does, state which law is used. If not, write invalid. So the first one, if I drive over the speed limit, then I will get a ticket. So P is if you drive too fast, that will imply that you're getting a ticket. I drove over the speed limit. So what does that mean? That means that P was true. Therefore, Q was true. That is detachment. Number two, if Amanda goes to the restaurant, she will order a hamburger. So restaurant implies hamburger. If she orders a hamburger, then she will get fries. So restaurant implies hamburger. Hamburger implies fries. So the argument or the conclusion there, if Amanda goes to the restaurant, she will get fries. That is your law of syllogism. P implied Q, Q implied R, so therefore P implied R. If it snows, then I will wear my snow boots. So snow implies boots. If it snows, then I won't go to school. So it also snows implies no school. This would be P implying Q. This down here would be P implying R. That is neither one of the laws. So if I don't go to school, then you don't even have to look at that because that not valid. That is not a valid argument on number three. Okay, number four. If Tina goes to the beach, she will wear sunscreen. So beach implies sunscreen. Tina goes to the beach. Therefore, we can conclude that she wears sunscreen. Again, that is the law of detachment. Number five, if you get a cold, then you will eat chicken soup. So cold implies chicken soup. You ate chicken soup. Now, we've got to be careful here because this is one of the many mistakes that people make here. You were given the hypothesis was true. However, the law of detachment says if this is true, then we can apply this. It says nothing about this being true, being able to imply this. This would be not valid. And if you would like to know why it's not valid, this is not the law of detachment. This would actually be a converse. We talked about inverses and converses the other day, and we know for a fact that sometimes converses are not true. So from your original statement, we can't assume that the converse is true. If you get a cold and you eat chicken soup, if that's true, we can't assume that if you eat chicken soup, then you got a cold. Again, the converse is not always true, so therefore this might not be a true statement. It might be, but you can't use that as a valid argument. The converse is not always true. If two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary. So linear pair implies supplementary. If two angles are supplementary, then their sum are 180. So P implied Q, Q implied R. So that means that if two angles form a linear pair, then their sum of their measures is 180. That is, in fact, syllogism. If Kaylee gets a 95 on her final exam, then she will get an A in geometry. Kaylee got a 98. So is that at least a 95? Sure. So this was true. So therefore, what do we know? This will be true as well. That is detachment. If it is raining, then you must bring an umbrella. You bring an umbrella. So be careful again. What is that? Raining implies umbrella. Does umbrella then therefore imply raining? No, not valid. And we can say again that this is another converse. We know that for a fact the converse, just because a statement is true, doesn't necessarily mean its converse is going to be true. Number 9 says use the law of syllogism to write three conditional statements that can be formed from the following statements. A part says if a quadrilateral is a square, then it has four right angles. So square implied four right angles. Now let's jump down and look at C. If a quadrilateral has four right angles, then it is a rectangle. So we can combine those two with the law of syllogism and say that if a quadrilateral is a square, then that implies that it has, or excuse me, that it is a rectangle. So a square implies rectangle, and we could even talk about Venn diagrams there, right? To where this would be the rectangles and this could be squares. So all this is connected that we're talking about. Let's try to find some more statements. Let's look at B. If a quadrilateral is a rhombus, then its opposite sides are parallel. If the opposite sides are parallel, then it is a parallelogram. So we can combine those and say if it's a rhombus, since we know that this is true, then it's a parallelogram. So a rhombus would ultimately imply that a shape is a parallelogram. If a shape is a rhombus, then it also must be a parallelogram. Now let's look for one more. Let's look at C and D. C says if a quadrilateral has four right angles, then it's a rectangle. And the D says if it's a rectangle, then its opposite sides are congruent. So therefore we could connect those and say if a quadrilateral has four right angles, then its opposite sides are congruent. So four right angles implies opposite sides are congruent. Now, these are just two, talking about syllogism and detachment. We could also throw in our law of contrapositives that we discussed earlier. That's another way that we can prove things deductively. If you don't remember the law of contrapositives, that says if a statement is true, its contrapositive must also be true. So that gives us several tools here that we can use for deductive reasoning to prove that things are true.